Welcome to The Jump. And man, what an exciting week. I thought I'd bring in Jamison Ducey, a familiar face from previous Jump episodes. Good morning, Jamison. How you doing?
Doing great, Rich. Thanks to be here.
Thank you. And just this week, OpenAI released ChatGPT 4.0, and they may have just stolen the show from Google's I/O Keynote event. So, Jameson, being the AI expert that you are, I know you have seen the demos, you have experimented with the model already. What are some aspects that our listeners should be most aware of? What jumped out to you about what ChatGPT 4.0 can do?
So, first off, I do think that the release is timely the day before I/O or a couple days before Google I/O happens. That was
Mm-hmm.
definitely on purpose for sure. I wouldn't doubt
Yeah.
that at all. But in terms of the new model, this is pretty interesting actually, because first off, what I want to say is this model is what I would define as truly multimodal, meaning it can take text, it can take vision, it can take audio. There are video and sentimental audio capabilities that are on the way as well. But I think the main gist of this update is actually that they're rolling out the availability of this model to a lot more people because they were able to get it optimized to the point where it is not costing them nearly as much money to run. So they're able to get a lot more capabilities out to the free tier for ChatGPT users.
Okay, you gave me a lot to work with there. ChatGPT is considered multimodal, right? And that means that it has the ability for voice, text, vision, right? Images.
Mhm.
And now you're saying that this combines it into one. So for those who may not be familiar with using ChatGPT, if you wanted to use like Dolly, which is their image generator, it would be kind of a different area you have to go to some extent, as opposed to being all in the same prompt location. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. And Dolly's actually still not available for the free tier, but what this is doing is making it a lot easier for people to use different kinds of data, right? So what that basically means is this model isn't actually converting video to something like text that the actual model is able to understand. The model is actually doing all of that itself. And so we don't have video capabilities just yet. They're rolling that out very slowly. They're still in experimental mode with that, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
just like with Sora with their video
Sure.
generator. But it seems like they are bringing all of these capabilities of being able to utilize and manipulate different media into one conglomerated model, which I think is one of the main goals of most large corporations that are actually creating these large language models right now. Um, but I think honestly they were able to get this rolled out first. They're able to get it rolled out to more people, which is kind of their main mission statement, right? Try and make AI available to as many people as possible. And even though free tier doesn't have all of the capabilities as being in ChatGPT Plus, like being able to make custom GPTs, you can actually now use custom GPTs that other people have made from ChatGPT Plus within the free tier as well.
Very cool. And so that benefits the creators of the GPTs, more access for their products and probably more feedback as well, which is always great. And yes, this is on the free tier. So I know right at the moment, a lot of questions are what are the benefits between ChatGPT Plus and 4.0. There's limitations on the amount of prompts and questions and things that you can ask right now 4.0 as well, as opposed to the paid area. One quick thing, and let me know if this is not a fair question to ask. You mentioned that they're available on the free tier, or this model is available on the free tier because they were able to get it more efficient. They were able to bring the cost down. They, as in OpenAI in this case. How does that happen?
So there's a lot of different things that go
Big
into it for
question.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different layers within the interface for ChatGPT and in terms of processing all of the data that the users are sending and receiving from the model. And I think the main thing is that they were able to they that's what they've been focusing on right now at this point is essentially making sure that it runs as smooth as possible and that it is cheap, and a lot of that is from the this current model's ability to be able to process all of these different kinds of data without having to convert it into text. And usually when it comes to video and audio, converting that into text, they're using different models. For the previous large language models,
Hmm.
they had to be converted into text with a different model, and that's more costly, right? So now we're able to see that this single model is able to take all of these different modalities of data, even starting to be real time, right, with audio and video, and pretty much just process them. It's optimized in terms of having the model tuned and able to essentially bring down as I think it's a smaller model actually as well than GPT-4 Turbo, which is what makes it cheaper for a lot. It's running on more complex chips as well at the moment, since the physical hardware industry is also still very much improving in the AI field. So again, it's a lot of different areas that really let them release this improved model. And there isn't really any crazy new technology that's going into it. It's basically just them polishing everything that they have so far and integrating it all together.
Great answer. I knew I threw you on the spot on that one, but it seems like it's overall more streamlined in comparison with still those incremental improvements that are happening behind the scenes and on the hardware. So another area that you mentioned right off the bat was this model has kind of somewhat of emotions, it seems like, or is able to display emotions. Of course, we're not talking about AGI. The real time conversational speech. So it has pauses, it has humor, it can change dialect as well, and then brings in that emotional aspect. What were your thoughts when you were potentially using that or looking at the demo, even?
So it was a little scary. It was a little weird. It felt a
Right?
lot like the movie Her, for sure. Coming from the tech industry, of course, I'd say it's kind of self-aware that they were able to make the voice so close to Scarlett Johansson's voice from
Yeah.
the movie.
Right. It sounded like it could have been her,
Right,
actually.
right.
Hmm.
And the emotional response and the latency as well as it being able to respond faster to vocal prompts and commands. That's all because of this being one single model, right?
Mm.
Like what I said before, there was another model that was converting audio and video into text tokens. That's not
Hmm.
happening anymore. And so this model is actually able to pick up a lot more patterns because a lot of those patterns were actually lost in that sort of transfer to text. So all of that sentimentality, that's not just coming out in terms of generation and expression from the model's point of view. It's able to actually detect those emotions in your voice as well and sort of judge your mood and respond accordingly, which I think is pretty interesting for sure. And I'm very excited to get my hands on it.
It's very impressive that real time response that they incorporate. You don't have to listen to it finish before you can either interrupt and it picks things up.
Right?
It's really quite impressive. So more to come. And you can change the voice. You could just ask it to change the voice if you like. Let's go over to another aspect that they mentioned. They are releasing the model on Mac OS, and I know this was a big thing for you. Why is that important to you and others?
So this is actually something that I think is pretty interesting because OpenAI has a partnership with Microsoft right now, right? And they are essentially, Microsoft is using their models in Windows as an OS based chatbot, something that's integrated into the desktop. And what's really cool about this is that OpenAI has partnered now with Apple to get this onto their OS as well, onto Mac OS. And so with the press of a few buttons, you're able to actually open up a chat prompt eventually. Again, that's not just available yet. This release was a lot of advertisements and foreshadowing, I suppose. But I just think it's really cool to have one model, one piece of technology that's shared on two very opposing platforms. I think that's kind of nice to see AI bringing things together in that regard for sure.
That is super nice. I wonder if they'll have different colors, like when you text between an Android and a iPhone. But the other thing that you're kind of bringing up here, and I want to see if we're trickling into that, is last week or two when I was on with Charles Dunn and we were talking about Llama 3, he mentioned the importance of moving on to on-device capabilities. Is that what you're foreseeing or kind of referencing here, as well as if they can go on the iOS, the Apple iPhones? That's what you're excited about too.
I'd say I see that coming. It's definitely not something that is happening just yet. Even with what we see with the demos, that chatbot that's on the OS is still sending stuff to remote devices to be processed,
Mhm.
not locally. But because Macs are so powerful, people use Macs all the time for machine learning. You can host a small to kind of intermediate sized model on a Mac if you have a powerhouse of a Mac at least.
Mhm.
Um, but as technology progresses in that regard, as these models become more optimized and smaller, but still just as efficient and just as accurate, then I think we're going to be seeing that happen a lot more. We have not just Apple, but we have Google with Android and even Microsoft as well, doing pretty much everything that they can to get all of their hardware upgraded to the point where they're able to run these models. And so once that happens, OpenAI is already pretty much set up to have the infrastructure to utilize that and get things running for people on their own computers. And then at that point, it's free for them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to follow that. And I think you even mentioned that 4.0 might be actually be small. It's going to be 4.0 might be smaller than the Turbo. And then you're also looking at Anthropic's Claude and Meta's Llama all having different size models, potentially just for that too. One company that we have mentioned before, but I don't want to leave them out, is Google did have that massive event. Quite an event, super entertaining overall. Was there anything exciting that you think would be helpful to share here about what they highlighted or showcased?
Yeah. I kind of love Google I/O events. I think it's interesting mainly to be able to compare the directions that these different companies are going in terms of how exactly they're showcasing these models, how they're diversifying them, or how they're conglomerating them into one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Google, they're trying to sort of go the middle route between what OpenAI is doing and what Meta is doing with Llama. And it's not necessarily just open source, it's not necessarily just really big. They're pretty much trying to own the entire market with that. Because I don't think they've found a specific area that they can really specialize in that stands
Mm-hmm.
out for them, besides being able to integrate everything into their own platforms. And that doesn't require a specific model, so to say.
Interesting. It's funny to see these massive companies try to find their niche. So, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. One last piece I'm going to throw at you before we leave. Schutzkeeper, he's leaving OpenAI. He's a co-founder and chief scientist. Any impact here on OpenAI, would you say, or business as usual?
I'd say when it comes down to that, I think it's sort of like a Wozniak and Jobs situation, kind of, right?
Mm,
And so
yeah.
when Wozniak left Apple, was there too much of a setback? I mean, Apple is still pretty much one of, if not the most expensive companies in the world, right?
Yeah, it's one, two, or three at any given day. So, okay, interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. That was somebody who also tried to push out Sam Altman a little bit. So I wonder how interactive or involved he was over the past couple months anyway. So, Jamison, great details. I'm really looking forward to this progression of these models. I mean, they just get more and more impressive. So, thanks for being on here. For The Jump, I'm Rich Bowers. Take care, everybody. See ya.